Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Lashing Out Podcast, Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jarrod Prugar. I'm joined by my co-host and good friend, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, this is a podcast that I don't know that we thought we would be recording. Going into last weekend, the Big Ten Championship really wasn't on my radar. But alas, here we are. And it's a good time to be a Penn State Nittany Lion. It's a good time to be a college football fan. And it's not a great time to be an AD or a football coach in the SEC to talk about strength of schedule and everything else that, matters this time of year.
Yeah, and maybe not the best time of year to be driving across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and into Indiana with the cold snap that's going on. So, yeah, definitely a trip that's not on the radar, was not on my radar. And I still don't know if I want Penn State to play the game. Not for the ramifications of if they win, but the ramifications of if they lose. And we'll do game predictions to start the third segment like we usually do. But the risk here is, and I don't think it's going to be a risk. The risk here is, though, if they lose, they're probably still the 5 seed. I don't think the committee, or maybe they drop to 6. I don't think the committee's going to punish anybody who plays this weekend. But the risk is if you lose, you don't get that second week off. There's 1 week between the championship game and the playoffs starting. But if you're Indiana, if you're Notre Dame, if you're anybody else currently in the playoff, you have 2 weeks off. And if you lose your conference title game, you only have 1 week off. So I think just from a risk perspective, I don't know if I really want Penn State to play this game. That being said, I'm completely pumped. Completely excited for Saturday. I have no idea what's going to happen. There's a lot of common opponents between the two teams, but common opponent games, they're a tiebreaker. They're better than flipping a coin, as others in the Big Ten have suggested. But Saturday could be an all-time game for Penn State, and I quite frankly don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's such a weird position for Penn State to be in. We're going to highlight the college football playoff and conference championships in the second segment, but they're in a really weird spot. You win, and it's great, right? You could be the number 1 seed, depending on how the game goes, depending on how the SEC championship goes. You lose, you're probably still a 5 seed, but you're right. That bye, the double bye is the beauty thing, right? But is it really the beauty when you're playing really good football? I think that's kind of the trepidation. You're playing really good football right now, and I think Penn State is doing that. Same thing with Oregon. I think they're doing some really nice things. There's a reason why they're obviously, in the Big Ten championship game. But again, 2 weeks off is a lot of time off in football. Yes, I know that you can rest up. You can do a lot of different things in 2 weeks, but that's a long way to go to focus on one game and then another week to 10 days for another game. And it's just a weird scheduling dynamic to fit in with the quarterfinals being at bowl sites and things like that. But for me, this is awesome college football. I mean, Oregon is a first-year Big Ten member. They're scheduled. They're undefeated. They beat Idaho by 10. Boise State, my beloved Broncos, by 3. They beat Oregon State, beat the doors off of Oregon State, UCLA, like Penn State did, Michigan State, Ohio State they beat, Purdue they demolished, Illinois they demolished, Michigan they demolished. So, I mean, the same thing with Maryland and Oregon, Wisconsin. The same thing with Washington. So they've won big, they've won small, they've won a lot of different ways. But for me, this is a really great matchup. You've got Abdul Harder, who's playing some lights-out football at the edge rusher position, which is great. We talked about that on the postgame show, really about how he's only less than a year into putting his hand in the dirt and going after the quarterback as an edge rusher. You got a good offense in Penn State going against a really good defense in Oregon, and vice versa. A really good Penn State defense going against an Oregon offense led by Dylan Gabriel, who's James Franklin mentioned. It seems like he played football in college for the last 10 years. So, I mean, there's a lot of good different storylines. The biggest thing, though, these guys are competitors. They're there. They want to win the game, and they want to continue on and it's a really good spot to be in if you're the Nittany Lions.
It really is, and I think the key to the game is going to be how well does Penn State start, because Oregon loves to go fast. They love to no huddle. If they can catch Penn State defense sleeping, they get Penn State defense into a bad personnel package. They can hit turbo mode, and barring any incompletions or anything where they can keep the clock running, they could trap Penn State into a bad position group on defense and be able to just march right down the field. And maybe they can do that 2 or 3 times in the first half and really put Penn State in jeopardy. And if the offense also starts slow, which the offense has a tendency to start slow more often than the defense, I feel like the defense has kind of figured that out as the season's gone along. The offense, maybe not so much. I don't think it's unheard of that Penn State could be down 2 possessions midway through the second quarter, and maybe that extends into the second half. So I think the start is very crucial. I think staying clean, not having any self-inflicted mistakes. Ohio State did that a lot. I just watched the 40-minute game last night just to get refreshed on it. And man, Ohio State could have had 2 turnovers in the first 2 possessions. They did turn over on their second possession. Oregon scores, and then they do the field goal. I mean, not the field goal, the kickoff off the up man, and then they get the ball back. So a lot of bonus possessions, bad clock management at the end of the game when Ohio State could have won it. Ohio State was on the road at a time where Big Ten teams haven't learned to travel across the country in a 1-week scenario. Oregon's got the longer trip to come to Indy, but I think the first 10 minutes, first 12 minutes of this game before the end of the first quarter, I think we're going to have a good idea of how this thing's going to shake out.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that long trip, and, it matters. And that's why Penn State, I think, is got a leg up as far as preparation goes. They don't have to go nearly as far. It's a 7-hour drive, 7.5, nearly 8 hours from State College. They're not driving, they're flying. So that, that's cut down vastly. But you look at kind of what Oregon has done in the first quarter. You start talking about their starts. They have not started very great, not very well, I guess I should say, in the first quarter in many of their games outside of Illinois and Purdue. Illinois is, I think, an outlier because Illinois is number 21 in the country, and I think they're a decent. But against a lot of the other guys, even Maryland, Oregon scored only 7 points. Against Washington, Oregon only scored 7 points. So they don't start necessarily fast either. And that's a good problem to have. They 7 points against Michigan. That's a problem. But that's really good for Penn State, though, because that means, hey, listen, they don't necessarily start the game very well. And that's been a James Franklin thing for years. Going back to, like we talked about, the 2016 Big Ten Championship game when they had to make that comeback against Wisconsin. So, for Penn State, they got to start out.
I nearly walked out of Lucas Oil Stadium in that game. Nearly walked out of Lucas Oil Stadium.
It was ugly. And then Saquon obviously hits that wheel route against T.J. Watt, and the rest is history. But Penn State needs to get started well. Make Oregon play from behind. Oregon's biggest near slip-up was against Wisconsin. Wisconsin finished the season where they did, I think it's 6-5, or 7-5, somewhere around there. But it's just one of those situations where now, go out and get that start. Wisconsin, that's probably the biggest trip that Oregon has made. I mean, obviously Purdue, but Purdue is Purdue. Then Michigan, they didn't start very well. Went into the second quarter, 21 points. So, for Penn State, they got to withstand the surge early and then, boom, go play. And you got to start, make Dylan Gabriel uncomfortable and make Oregon play from behind and see what you can do.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is even if Penn State gets Oregon into clear passing situations, I don't think this is the Oregon of old where they had the prolific air raid offense. Chip Kelly's running it. But they love the clap and they love the fake clap, the go on 2 claps thing. And Penn State has had a history of jumping off sides this season in critical moments. So if you get into guaranteed passing situations, you get them in a 3rd and long, 3rd and 14 plus, whatever, and then you jump on the sides and you gift them a 3rd and 9 or a 3rd and 5. That's where they could start getting burned. But I think the game's winnable. I think this is a good matchup. It's a good barometer. It's an opportunity for James Franklin to face a top 5 team that's not named Ohio State or Michigan, or not named Ole Miss with half a roster. So I think it's a great opportunity. I as a fan, I have an outcome in mind, and as a media member, I may have a different outcome in mind. Like, I am totally torn. Like, I could see Penn State being down two possessions and it never being close in the second half, and then they pull within one. Or I can see Penn State just like winning an absolute slugfest and they're up by 2 possessions and Oregon's playing from behind. So I really don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's going to be an epic Big Ten championship game. And it's one that actually matters with the way the playoff format is this year, which is, I mean, credit to the college football ESPN gods making the 12T playoff happen, because it's the first year for it. And man, has it been amazing.
Absolutely. We're going to talk a little bit more about the playoff when we come back for the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lasching Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. My name is Jarrod. He's Kevin. Kevin, the college football playoff is wild. You know, there is a sense of irony in the first year that Penn State is there's a 12-team playoff. Penn State is what would be the number 4 ranked team in the country. Of course, they are the 6th seed at the moment. I'm sorry, the 5 seed now. They're number 3 or whatever. So it's wild. We have conference championships going on this weekend, Friday, Saturday. The selection show is Sunday. A lot can happen between now and then. Obviously, Penn State plays the 8 o'clock game. 8:17 is when kickoff is scheduled from Indianapolis, Indiana, home of the Brickyard 400 and the Indy 500, racing capital of the world. And I think this is going to be a high-paced game. But this season is much like an IndyCar or a NASCAR race. It's fast-paced. It's chaos in every corner. And there's been so much drama and so many storylines that really it's hard to keep up. For Penn State, they control their own destiny. You win, you're probably the 1 or 2 seed. And you got a really good track to the national semifinals, the Final Four. All right? And if they lose, they're the number 5 seed, and they still have a really good track and a home game to get to the semifinals for number 4, or for in the Final Four. So there's just so many layers to this, and it's going to be crazy. And this is awesome. But now you see that people aren't always happy. And we knew this was going to happen with 12 teams. It was 13, 14, 15 teams. Oh, whoa. What's going on here, right? Because the top 4 teams, the top highest-ranked conference champions, get the first round bye. Right now, that stands as the Big Ten champion, the ACC champion, the SEC champion, and the Mountain West champion, potentially Boise State. Now, if Boise State loses to UNLV, that changes things. But that leaves the Big 12 out in the water because they didn't play great schedule, right? We're talking about Lane Kiffin and the SEC saying, oh, every dog it's a dogfight. Well, don't lose to the teams that you lost to. It's that simple to me. Like, you win the games that you're supposed to win to. It's a consistency. That's what we talked about for James Franklin all the time. That matters. Those things should matter. And what's not determined yet, how the committee is going to view what happens Friday and Saturday, not for the winners, but for the losers.
Yeah, and I think not only is this the first year of the college football playoff, this is also the first year of major realignment as well. And the 4 conference winners that you're talking about, those 4 conference champions games all have a team in them that is from a different conference. Oregon wasn't in the Big Ten last year. Arizona State wasn't in the Big 12. SMU wasn't in the ACC, and Texas wasn't in the SEC. Like, how awesome is this that all of this realignment happens. The Big 12, the Pac-12 will never be able to compete in the Big 10. Here we are, Oregon's undefeated, run the table in the Big 10 conference. They're in the championship game. Texas, their only losses to Georgia. They get to potentially avenge that loss in Atlanta on Saturday afternoon at 4 p.m. for a de facto Georgia home game. But they get the chance to avenge the loss. And then SMU comes into the ACC, which we already knew was probably the weakest Power 4 conference of them all, and pretty much run the table in the ACC. They're 11-1. They get to play a sleepwalking Clemson team, who I don't think that game is going to be competitive at all. I don't think Clemson has an offense of any chance of sniffing it. And honestly, I think Dallas is a little colder than Clemson is, especially getting into this time of year. And it's going to be 36 degrees and at Charlotte and kickoff. It could be windy. Who knows what's going to happen in that one? So, 12-team playoff, 4 Power 4 conferences, all with a representative in the game from a different conference. Like, welcome to college football. 2024 has been awesome. And yeah, if you're in the SEC and you're number 15 and you're sitting there with 3 losses, cry me a river. Like, I don't want to hear it at all. Like,
it's so tough for me, given the losses that Alabama has, to respect them at number 11. I understand the brand recognition, the name recognition, but at the same time, I mean, Miami is in the same boat. They have some bad losses, and they played some bad football lately. But do I think that they should be behind Alabama? I don't know. Or Ole Miss, maybe, but you still have 3 losses. Like, you can't bash another conference when you didn't win the game. You have to win. You have to do those things. And unfortunately, they just didn't do it. And like Indiana's Big Ten schedule was not good. But again, they won games that they were supposed to. Penn State's schedule, it wasn't the best of schedules, but they still won. Oregon, same deal. They weren't challenged a lot either. They still won. Winning should matter.
Yeah, and that Alabama loss to Oklahoma should, like, that loss alone should disqualify Alabama from the playoff. Like, 24-3. I grant it's on the road at Oklahoma at night, but Oklahoma doesn't have their top 5 wide receivers, and you go out and lay an egg and you lose 24-3. Like, that's disgusting. I don't know how they're in it. But if you're Penn State, if you lose on Saturday night, you're the number 5 seed. You get Arizona State at home. You think Arizona State, the Sun Devils, are going to love to come play Beaver Stadium when it's 25 out and 20-mile-an-hour winds? Absolutely not. And then they'd have Boise State in the quarterfinals should everything shake out the way the rankings from this week were. But
That's right.
I think Saturday is going to be an all-time day of college football. Obviously, you have the Big 12 to start at noon, SEC at 4, and then Big 10. Best game of the weekend, I think, is Penn State, Oregon. Georgia, Texas, I think, is going to be good, but it's a rematch. So I think the intrigue there is only, can Texas finish the loss? I think, granted, we're Penn State media. I'm a Penn State fan, alumni, whatever, everything under the books. I just think that's the most intriguing matchup. They're teams that don't play each other. They haven't played each other.
Yeah, they haven't played since 1995.
The 1995 Rose Bowl. Like,
right.
It's. I think that's the matchup of the weekend, and I just can't wait for Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting for sure because you get to see a lot of different things. And in the Big Ten, it's been so the same, right? It's Ohio State, Michigan, this, whatever. But now you got some new blood. And for Penn State, this is a great opportunity to go show and prove what you can play. Dan Lanning is a phenomenal coach. What he's doing at Oregon is great. Now, Oregon has far superior resources than even Penn State does. And I think you put that in and you can look at that in a lot of different ways. That Nike deal or Nike sponsorship with the jerseys is insane. We're going to get a great matchup for those. I think Penn State's going to be in their all whites, which is such a sharp, crisp look. And God knows what they're going to pull out for Oregon, which is awesome too. So it's, the jersey aficionados, the basic blues, the all name the game going against the Flash of Oregon is a thing too. But like you look at some of the other matchups, if the conference championships didn't happen and they just went with what was the rankings right now, which is, I don't think Penn State people would complain by any means, right? Penn State would get Arizona State. Notre Dame gets Alabama. Alabama playing in South Bend, Indiana is insane to me, which is great. That's going to be a frigid place December 20th or 21st. You've got Georgia, who would have to play an Indiana type. And then you get Tennessee playing probably at Ohio State. Those matchups in themselves would be awesome, right? And then Penn State gets Arizona State or whoever the Big 12 champion is, if it's Iowa State. So there's just so many opportunities for some incredible football. There's a lot that has to be played. But for Penn State, the opportunity for Saturday is there. Win it. Go prove that you can be a conference championship. All these, media pundits are, Penn State hasn't done this. They haven't won the big game. They didn't beat Ohio State. Well, guess what? They won the other 11. And, that matters. And that should matter. They didn't lose when they could have lost at USC, when they could have lost at Minnesota, right? They won. And winning matters, not how the team is playing. And that's the other thing, too, is Mark Manuel isn't sure how they're going to view these losses. At one point, it's the teams that are not playing aren't moving at all, or moving down, or moving up, I guess I should say. Then in one sentence, he also said the teams that lose are probably not going to be punished. Well, which is it?
Yeah.
But for Penn State, the opportunity is now, and they have a great opportunity on a national stage to prove not just that they can win, but that they belong.
And I think the biggest question that comes out of Saturday, let's say the outcome is Penn State wins and Texas wins. Does Penn State jump Texas to be the number 1 seed? I think they should. Now, Texas would avenge their loss, but they still lost to the same team, and they got to play the same team again. This is a Penn State team playing a 12-0 Oregon team who's been the number 1 ranked team since they beat Ohio State back or late September, whenever it was. That would be the singular best win in the country.
Right. The biggest win.
Yeah. Biggest win. They're an underdog on Saturday. I think it's a legitimate argument could be made that if Penn State beats Oregon, they're the number 1 seed. And for a 12-team playoff year, how James Franklin of it would it be if in the first year of the 12-team playoff, Penn State's the number 1 overall seed? That secures
and it can happen.
That secures his job for 8 or 10 years if he does it. Not that he doesn't
really gets the monkey off his back, and then go win a playoff game. Win a playoff game, man, and make it to the Final Four or the national title game. That path is not as crazy as it seems. But we're going to talk about what they need to do to get on this path. But you mentioned before, in the third segment, but Penn State is an underdog, and that's something that they're familiar with in big games. But Kevin, you're going to tell us a little bit more about dogs themselves.
Yeah, this episode is brought to you by Good Dog Beverage Company. Proud sponsor. We picked them up mid-season. They've been with us the rest of the way. So Good Dog offers a variety of products including 0 carb, 0 sugar vodka cocktails, and bourbon hard seltzers. Also, whiskey cocktails only have 3 grams of carbs and 3 grams of sugar. Through Good Dogs leverage the beverage program, they donate a portion of the profits from every case sold and 100% of the merchandise sales profits to provide service dogs for people in need. You can go to gooddogbeverage.com. That's good, DOGG beverage.com to find merchandise and the closest retailer carrying Good Dog beverages to you. And if you're watching us on YouTube, link is down there on the banner.
Kevin, we are always the favorites of our listeners, I would hope. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the matchups from Friday and Saturday as we preview them all when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lashing Out Podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. He's Kevin. I'm Jarrod. Kevin, let's preview conference championships. We'll get to the Big Ten We'll save that for last because literally that's going to be the last one that pops up as we scroll through these. This is what should be a great day of football. I am very excited for Friday night. My beloved Boise State Broncos host UNLV at Albertson Stadium, the Smurf Turf, for the final Mountain West Conference Championship that they will be a part of. Then they move to the Pac-12 for Pac-12 After Dark. Also, Friday night is Tulane and Army, the AAC, the American Athletic Conference. UNLV and Boise State. Who you got, Kevin? We'll do our predictions as we go, and let's make that easier.
I think Boise State wins. I think Ashton Jeanty is going to be too much. It's a home game. You got the elements there. Las Vegas isn't really known for being as cold, though it does get cold. Since F1 has gone to Las Vegas, I have learned that November in Nevada gets cold. But no, I think Boise State, they're going to solidify their playoff spot. I think they're good there.
I think so too. Obviously, that's a loaded question for me. Go Boise State. Army Tulane. Army is 10-1. Tulane is 9-3. That game is going to be on 8 p.m. on ABC.
Tulane's Louisiana, isn't it? Warm weather game. Got to go. Warm weather team have to go up to West Point. I think weather's probably the only home field advantage to that point. Not saying that like the Army crowd isn't faithful or anything. I just don't know if it's as passionate about football as they are other things.
And they have another game.
Yeah, so
it's infinitely more important than a conference championship, which is wild.
Tulane is also a road 5-point favorite, and I think that may tell you all you need to know. That despite Army being ranked 24, if Vegas sees it as a Tulane 5,
Army is fake. They are very fake.
Yeah, I 5 points seems like a weather adjustment spread. So I think it's Tulane.
I think so too. All right, so we have agreed so far. I am sending you the text so we can keep track when we talk after the game. To really make sure that we keep ourselves accountable.
Okay, I can write it down on the sheet.
Hey, you write it down. That's even better. I trust you. Now, next up, we are into Saturday at noon. Iowa State, Arizona State in the Dr. Pepper Big 12 Championship. This game is in Dallas. Arlington, Texas. It's at Jerry World. Did I ever envision these two teams meeting in Jerry World? Not a chance. Not an absolute chance. I like Arizona State.
I'm going to follow you on that one too. Arizona State, they're hot. They have wins against, I think, 3 ranked opponents this year. They're on a 5-game win streak. They did lose on the road at Cincinnati, on the road at Texas Tech, but they did beat BYU, Kansas State, and Utah. Those are their 3 ranked wins. Utah's a little bit of a fake ranked win. Kansas State at Kansas State was a really good win for Arizona State. It's indoors. I don't think weather's obviously not an issue. It's played
up in the roof, baby.
It's played at noon, so we don't have to worry about the sun. We didn't talk about this last week, but did you see that? I think it was Baylor put the fake Jerry World sign on the scoreboard as Kansas is going to kick a field goal, and then Kansas misses the field goal. Excellent troll job from the Baylor stadium staff there, but. Yeah, I think we're in agreement here. I think it's Arizona State. 2-point game. Yeah, 2 points is not a lot.
It is very much a toss-up. It could go either way. But I think
I would take Arizona State against the spread is what I would
put a fork in them. Iowa State's done. We got the SEC, 4 o'clock at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. This is a tough one for me.
Let me go first.
No, I like Texas. I watched how Georgia played in a rivalry game. That's obviously different. Georgia's susceptible to a lot of things, but Texas hasn't really been challenged outside of that game against Georgia. So, I mean, I like Texas here to continue on. Sark is doing a really good job down there. Steve Sarkisian, I think, is doing a really good job in Austin, and it'll be interesting to see where they end up. But I do think that Texas wins, but I think it's going to be a close game.
My only concern with this one is Quinn Ewers' ankle.
But the beauty is they have Arch Manning.
That's the thing is how short of a leash does Sark have Ewers on? I think Georgia's defense is far better than any team Texas has played of late. And for that reason, I think Sark has to have Ewers on a very short leash because Ewers last week against A&M had the double metal splint ankle brace that you could buy from like CVS, and that was taped around his cleat. Not great for mobility. He looked hampered. Arch Manning ended up getting in the game. I don't remember if he finished the game or I wasn't paying terribly much attention because I had to flip over to Oregon game there. I think we need disagreement. I think I'm just going to take Georgia out of spite.
That's fair.
For the sake of content.
ACC Clemson. Yeah. ACC, SMU, and Clemson. I have been on the SMU bandwagon for what seems like a couple months now. I like SMU in this, but the absolute pure chaos scenario of Clemson winning the ACC title would be insane.
I don't think you have to worry about Clemson. And that's me as an alumni. I'm looking at SMU's schedule real quick. At Louisville, road win, ranked win. Home against Pitt. Got Clemson. 2.5 point favorites. Yes, the chaos that would be Clemson getting in, coming up from 17th in, would bump Alabama out of the playoff. So I think from a college football as a whole, like the world would be healed if a different 3-loss team gets in and it's not Alabama. But I think it's SMU.
Yeah, I do too. And then the Big Ten. I have Penn State.
Hold on, we got some stuff to talk about.
Okay.
As an underdog, as James Franklin has been at the helm, Penn State is 7-24. As an underdog since 2021, which is the year after COVID, obviously the COVID season, they're 1-9 in games in which they're underdog. The one win, we believe, is the season opener at Wisconsin. When Penn State was ranked 19th, Wisconsin was ranked number 12. Since 2021, as an underdog, they've been an underdog in 10 games. They have only beat the spread 3 times with an average margin of loss. If you sum all the scores up, they are negative points by 8.7 points per game, including the 3 wins. 0-5 as an underdog since 2022. 0 worst in the country. In games of which they are favored, since 2022, Penn State is second in the country, 32-1 as a favorite. Oregon is right behind them, 33-2. Since 2023, Penn State's 21-1, and Oregon is 23-1 as a favorite in the game.
Something's got to give.
Something's got to give. You got to look at common opponents. Oregon and Penn State both had to travel to Wisconsin. Oregon's trip was later in the season. Oregon was only able to muster 16 points to Wisconsin. Penn State got 28. Both defenses gave up 13 to a very, very incompetent Wisconsin offense. Wisconsin did get points on that fluky fake punt. It wasn't even a fake punt. The Penn State coverage was just bad. They ended up getting points there. Washington was on the road. Oregon had them at home. Both games are very uncompetitive, although Oregon's defense did give up 21 points to Washington. Quarterback Williams, is it DeJuan Williams? I forget. Whoever was Washington subbed in at halftime only played the second half for Penn State. He did play the entire half for Oregon. Penn State's defense is ranked 4th nationally. Oregon 7th. Penn State is 19th in total offense. Oregon is 15th. They have 6 common opponents, the one difference being the Ohio State game. Oregon was able to win with Ohio State traveling 3 time zones clear across the country. Penn State obviously lost that game at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great matchup. It's a great story. I think Penn State wins 24-20. I texted that to you earlier today.
Yes, you did.
I think that Penn State has an opportunity. Again, James Franklin is very detailed in the way that he goes about things logistically. Traveling to Indianapolis is not easy from Oregon. It's not like they can go in a week ahead of time, right? It's not like they're there right now. So, I mean, getting your team ready to go. Their body clocks will be about 5 p.m. On Saturday.
Which is a lot better than 8:17 p.m.
Right, for us old people. But line up and go play. And for Penn State, this is a chance to get that monkey off your back. And it's not against Ohio State or Michigan, who are the biggest reasons why they aren't favored in those games. And, of course, Michigan's had their scandals, and we're going against a really good period of football for Ohio State, despite them not being able to beat the one team that they are supposed to beat.
As the week goes on, I think Penn State can win it more and more and more. I don't know if that's the fan in me or just because the way I watched the Ohio State game last night. Watching Oregon all year, they obviously struggled to start the season. I think they're getting better. I think their offense is very fast. I think this game is going to be – the tone is going to be set in the first 2 to 3 drives of offense for both teams. I think the scenario that I mentioned early in the show in the first segment, that Penn State could be down close to 2 possessions, not 2 touchdowns, but 9 to 10 points. I think they could be down at halftime. I think that's the way this plays out. I don't know if a 10-point deficit to Oregon, given their offense, given their ability to run the ball. I mean, we talk about Dylan Gabriel and he's been a college quarterback as long as James Franklin's been at Penn State. We give him a lot of credit for his throwing ability, but the Oregon offense is very good at running the ball. We'll see how Oregon's defense is. I think it's one of the fastest, quickest, most athletic defenses Penn State has played. Kotelnicki does not like to spread the defense out, which I think is going to be critical this weekend. And I just don't know if he's going to be willing to. Big game James, I'm not trying to feed into the catastrophizing of the fan base there. I just don't think. As a fan, I want them to win. As a fan, I think they can win every bit of this. I believe that they can win this game with every bit of my heart. As a media member, I think I have to go. Penn State's going to lose 28-31.
That's fair. We disagreed on 2 games. We'll see who ends up being correct. Kevin, we will talk again after the Big Ten championship, sometime Sunday night, and it will be posted and distributed on Monday. But we thank you guys all for listening to the Lashing Out Podcast and Nittany Sports Now Network. We'll catch you again after the Big Ten championship game.